I have quit brush curling my hair. I don't do it anymore, and there are several reasons why. And I feel like a lot of these things will really help you out. So let's just start with, what is brush curling? Brush curling is also referred to as brush styling, brush manipulation, or curl enhancement. There are various different names for it, but I'm going to call it brush curling and explain the differences that I see between brush curling and styling, because I still do brush styling. So brush curling, and specifically using the handle of a Denman brush to help define and curl the hair. You can see on the side what I'm referring to here. This is a technique I often used to do to help enhance my curl. If you have the time to do this type of method, you are going to really enhance that curl pattern, and in a lot of cases make your hair look a lot curlier than it naturally is. You might want to do this method for a variety of reasons. One, if you have different curl patterns all over your head and you strive to make the less curlier parts match the curlier parts, then brush curling using the handle like this would really help actually match it up and make the curls look more uniform if that's something you're striving for. And similarly, if you have damaged parts of your hair that don't curl up as well as the healthy parts, you might be inclined to try those techniques to help create a more uniform pattern. And just to let you know, there's nothing wrong with multiple curl patterns all over your head. It's very, very common. A lot of people do have that. I do myself. I have looser curls on my head and tighter curls on my head, kind of all mixed up. If you're someone that had that drastic contrast though, maybe you were more inclined to using those types of techniques because they do really work. And you might just do this because you simply love the result. You like the style, you love how it looks. And sometimes when you clump your curls into ringlets or really help enhance that natural curl direction, you're actually promoting longevity in your style a lot of the time. You've essentially created these curl families all over your head, and sometimes that can help keep frizz a little under control, meaning you seem to be able to preserve the style for a lot longer. So I'll tell you a bit about why I used to use these techniques, because it's not just brush curling, like handle curling that I did. It was a lot of finger rolling, finger coiling, finger twisting, curling. Also using the handle on the Denman brush. I loved those types of techniques. I didn't always do it all over my head because that does really take a long time. I did a few videos on that, and honestly, it took like an hour, maybe longer. My first ever video on YouTube here was about my flip section method video. And in that video, you may have found me then, or you may have found me more recently, but you'll notice I used to have a balayage. It went a bit coppery, and after a while I didn't like it, and I've gone back to this color. This isn't actually my natural color, by the way, but I just do like this color on me. So I had the balayage, and any form of bleaching causes damage. It doesn't matter what you put on your hair to protect it. It all causes some form of damage, right? So a lot higher porosity, and my hair was a lot frizzier. And because it was a bit frizzier, I did find that I did need more help and enhancement to lock those curl families in place, because I needed the longevity in the style. I really needed my hair to last a bit longer than it was. After one day of styling it, it would just be like really frizzy, and you wouldn't even realize that I had styled it the day before. So I naturally gravitated to these types of techniques that really did help enhance the curl. And at that stage, I did still have a few bits of my hair that were a lot damaged than the rest. So I did find myself wanting to try and match those areas like the rest, like I was saying earlier. But here's why I stopped using these techniques. So there's nothing actually wrong with these techniques, but if you're not preparing your hair properly for the technique and you cause mechanical damage and breakage, which I've seen a lot of people do, and the hair wasn't prepped in the right way for the technique to work as well. In my own time at home, when I was styling my hair, I would be doing some of these techniques and I would be rushing because I already knew they took a long time and I wanted to get them done, and it sometimes meant that I didn't prep my hair properly and I did cause a bit of breakage on my hair. So I always recommend in my videos, you need enough slip in your hair to be doing these sorts of techniques. You need enough water. You need to enable the brush or the handle or whatever it is to glide through the hair without snagging. Your hair is so fragile while wet. Any type of manipulation you're doing to it, even if you're throwing it up in a bun, it's going to cause a little bit of damage. There's a few things that can contribute to the mechanical damage as well when you're brush curling your hair. Let's go through them. So using the handle of typically a Denman brush, or frankly any brush that has a good handle, It's actually probably one of the less damaging ones because the handle is often smooth and you're not snagging anything. But here is where I have seen people go wrong. So when you're actually curling this up to the head, people sometimes don't leave a big enough gap at the top, and then you find it's actually really hard to unravel that, and you can quite easily pull a few hairs out doing that. I've done it before by accident. So if you're doing those techniques, make sure you know how to do them properly and that you're actually leaving that space at the top so you can properly pinch the hair. Don't just pull it out, make sure you're properly unraveling it. If you're doing this correctly, this is really effective, and I still do this sometimes on my sideburn pieces when I refresh my hair. This is the only time I would do this technique. You've probably seen me do it on here. But yeah, my sideburn hairs are a completely different curl texture, and apparently that's quite normal. I found out recently. They're a lot looser curl, and I do need encouragement there. Let's talk about bristle damage. I am a big advocate of bristle brushes. I really like them. They create juicy definition because the tension that's caused when you're sort of smoothing the hair really helps with the bounce of the curl. However, again, if you're not prepping the hair properly, it can cause damage. If you're concerned that a bristle brush might cause you damage, what you can do is a scratch test. So just on the back of your hand, take a bristle brush and just do that and see if it scratches. So this Denman bristle brush doesn't scratch my hands, but I can feel like if I gave it a bit of pressure it would. But for the most part it doesn't scratch. It doesn't mean it's the softest of brushes, but this is really effective at brush curling. You just got to make sure you've got a lot of slip, a lot of water. Typically when I use this brush, I actually put a lot of cream on the actual brush and my hair. But also, if you're someone that doesn't like a lot of cream and products in your hair, you could also accidentally over moisturize your hair doing these methods because these methods do require the slip, if that makes sense. There is a brush that I was gifted. I'm actually not going to say the name of the brush because I don't want to slate the brand, but the bristles on the brush are so hard. If I scratch it on my hand, literally it scratched my hand immediately. So always do the scratch test, guys. When I brush style my hair, so not like curling with the handle and things, but when I smooth my hair with a brush, I use the Tangle Teaser. This is designed to be used on wet hair, so it has been designed with that consideration of not snagging the hair and not breaking it. It doesn't scratch my hand when I do that. Again, if I was to apply a lot of pressure, it would obviously, but you know, it's pretty gentle. But yeah, because this has been designed for wet hair, I'm much more comfortable using this, and it's also a detangler brush, so when I'm smoothing my hair with the brush, if I've got a section, I can detangle it in the same breath and then go through and smooth it and create the clump. So it's like a 2-in-1 really. So if you are looking for a brush recommendation, honestly I would go with the Tangle Teaser because you can use it for two things, and you could also use it for handle curling if you wanted, but just bear in mind the curl width will replicate the width of the handle. So we've addressed the mechanical damage that potentially can happen on the hair from doing those types of techniques. Just please prep the hair properly first because the prep is as important as the actual method. Let's talk definition, because this is probably one of the main reasons you might do one of these techniques, because they enhance definition and they really work. If you've got that natural wave or curl in the hair, it can really help enhance it. But my hair isn't as damaged anymore. And for me personally, my hair at a healthier state has correlated with curlier hair. My hair has more definition since it's been healthier. When I leave my hair naturally to dry with no product in, my hair does spring up with no help or enhancement of a brush. The only reason I will now quote unquote style my hair, so brush style, so smooth it with a Tangle Teaser, like doing the flip section method and these sorts of techniques, is because what this does is smooth the frizz, because even though I have the definition naturally, I have a lot of frizz naturally. So when I'm using these smoothing techniques with the brush, what it's doing is smoothing the hair and clumping them together and help preserve my style for longer. I find that if I leave my hair completely natural, like I actually love it on the first day, and then day 2, 3, 4, it's just a lot bigger and a lot frizzier. Let's talk about curl direction. So another reason I've stopped doing those techniques like handle curling and finger rolling, finger coiling, because the method is already so long itself, it's unlikely that you have even more time to identify the direction your curl's also going in. And I've styled my hair on camera so many times and talked about my hair, I have managed to work out what direction my curls go in. So my curls typically go in like that. So this side of my head goes in this way, this side of my head goes in that way. But there's a section at the back, which I'm unsure. It kind of just like mixes it up a bit and surprises me each time. I don't really know the back section and where that's going. So what you'll find is if you are doing these brush curling techniques and you're not accounting for the direction the curl goes in, you could actually be pushing the curl in the opposite way to which it wants to go. And what that means is, even though it might come out great when you style it wet, and you might be like, wow, look at all these ringlety clumps, when you dry your hair, they might fall out because actually your hair wants to revert back. Because it's your root, right? The root sort of remembers where it's supposed to be going. Even though it might not completely flip back round, it might create like a wonky curl or more of a square curl. Some people do have those curls naturally and that's normal, but I have seen it happen often to people that try to force their hair in a different direction to which the curl wants to go. So if you've got loads of time on your hand, then you can sit there and work out the direction of the curl on your head, but I'm just going to assume you don't have the time. So essentially what I'm saying is you could spend all that time brush curling your hair for it to not really actually last and have that longevity that you expected because you didn't even brush curl it in the right direction to start with. And this also goes for other techniques like finger rolling. When you're finger rolling, if you're not paying attention to the way the curl flips at the end of your finger, for example, if it's flipping that way, but you're curling it up that way, it's not where your curl actually wants to go. And it might look fine wet, but when you dry it, it might actually be a bit looser, or the curls might not match your natural definition. If you've noticed me kind of shaking my root in routines, you know, like if I'm smoothing the brush away from my face or up and away like that, I'll often like shake it afterwards. That can sometimes help encourage the curl in the way that it wants to go. Let's talk about the curl width. So often these techniques can manipulate the width of the curl. So for example, if you are using the handle of this brush to help guide the curl, you're going to find that the width of your curl resembles this size to some degree. The same as if you were to use that, you would have much juicier, bigger curls. They're going to create much different results. And what I found was I wasn't really paying attention to the natural width of my curl. Some of the curls on my head have a much smaller width than other parts. So what I would find is sometimes my scalp would show because I was encouraging my curls into these clump families when they actually wanted to be way more divided than that naturally. So you would naturally see a bit more scalp because more hair's taken into these clumps. You would see the gaps between the clumps. And I started to realize this when I introduced a wide tooth comb into my routine. So when I started clumping my hair in any form, you know, smoothing the brush, handle curling, whatever, I would actually go in and comb my hair and that would separate the clumps out. And I would notice that my hair would look a lot fuller because what you're essentially doing is you're dividing up the clumps, and even though it doesn't make your hair denser, it can give the illusion of more density because you have smaller curl clumps stacked on top of more curl clumps, meaning it's giving the illusion of more curls essentially. Obviously you don't change your density, it's just like the style. And even when I'm smoothing my hair with a brush, sometimes I can accidentally create a big curl clump, especially if the product I use was a bit sticky. My hair could just fall into a massive clump. Going through with a comb afterwards does mean that I'm kind of staying true to my curl width. And this could also be a reason why a comb and combing out your clumps doesn't work for you. So if you've seen me mention combing out your curl clumps and you tried it and it didn't work, that could be why, because maybe your curl clumps are a lot thicker than the width that the comb gives. It might make your hair stringy, or it might just not be your natural curl width. But it can also really affect the actual volume and how your hair sits, because if you're clumping too many curls into one and not looking at your natural curl width, what you will find is the weight of the amount that is in the clump will actually weigh the root down. So you'll find you've got less of like a lift here because the weight of the clump is really pulling down on your head. And this might not be significant, but it just might be slight. And doing that all over can really give the look of less volume on the hair. So if volume is something you're looking for and you find you struggle to get it when you're brush curling, consider some of these reasons, because perhaps you are gathering too much hair into that clump. And the biggest thing is time. These techniques do take a lot of time. If you don't have the time, please don't stress yourself about trying to achieve these unified curls with these techniques, because often there are a lot of other things that you can do that kind of hack the process. For example, if you don't mind flipped over styling, the flip section method I came up with, I'll put a clickable link at the top here, which goes into a bit more detail on that. But essentially you are smoothing the hair forward in sections, and it takes a lot less time than some of these techniques, because what you're doing, if you're smoothing the hair over using something like the tangle teaser, and then you're using the comb to come in and take that whole section and divide it up for you, it kind of does like all of the brush styling in 3 sections as opposed to every single curl width all over your head. So that can save a lot of time. I've also shared some techniques on this channel before. Take your hand and use it as a divider, almost like a claw. I'll try and put something on the side to explain this in a bit more detail, but you can do things to divide up brush clumps to make this a little bit quicker. So these are some of the reasons that I have personally stopped doing these brush curling techniques. It doesn't mean I'll never do them again. I might still do them. Like I said, I do sometimes do them on my sideburns, but I have stopped using them as like go-to methods all over my hair because of all of those reasons, essentially. And maybe some of my reasoning for not doing them has helped you identify where you could be experiencing certain things in your routine that you've got questions about. If you already like a lot of these techniques and they work for you, great, continue to do them. There's nothing actually wrong with any of these techniques. These are all style preferences. We all have very, very unique, different heads of hair, and one technique's going to work for someone and not for someone else. So just because I'm not using certain techniques anymore doesn't mean that you shouldn't, because all of the reasons I listed at the beginning are valid reasons why you might want to keep doing these things. But if you do, just make sure you're always prepping your hair, because I do think that striving for healthy hair as opposed to curlier hair is always a lot more realistic. And no, I'm not a hairstylist, I'm not a professional in this, but this has all come from my trial and error, my experience styling my own curly hair, and I am definitely at a stage of much healthier hair. I've learned a lot along the way. I've made a lot of these mistakes myself, and I hope that some of these tips can also help you on your curly hair journey. If you're looking for more of a low effort styling routine and inspiration for that, please look at this video here, because this is what I've been doing regularly actually at the minute. And if you want to see how I actually do the flipped over method for styling, then you can click this video here. It's my flip section method video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, please let me know in the comments. Like the video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more curly content from me. I'll see you on my next one. Bye.